update on Kelsey. Seems like she just got overheated. I mean, this is 2 games in a row where we played in really, really hot environments. And so all indications are right now that she was just overheated.
That is the key point everything depends on. Stephanie White says the early signs are that Kelsey Mitchell simply got overheated. But when you look at how much Mitchell had been doing before she left the game, the bigger question is whether Indiana is relying too heavily on its biggest scorer at the worst possible time of the season.
Every take he gave on Kelsey Mitchell last week was 100% accurate with her overexerting her body. Now, we seen that take place last year during the playoffs. When they played Las Vegas, she had to be carried off the court. It's not a surprise to anyone that Kelsey Mitchell is trying to make a run for WNBA MVP.
This concern did not suddenly start when Mitchell went to the locker room. The commentator had already been saying that her heavy workload and non-stop playing style were something to watch. They even mentioned last season's playoff scare, when Mitchell had to be helped off the court. That does not prove the same thing happened here, and it definitely does not mean anyone knowingly put her in danger. But it gives this moment some important context. Mitchell is not a player who takes it easy during possessions. She attacks the defense, runs hard, creates space, works without the ball, and takes responsibility when Indiana needs someone to score. That style is a big reason why she can change a game. But it also means that any physical warning sign becomes important. The main thing we still do not know is whether this was simply a one-time issue caused by the heat, just as White suggested, or whether Mitchell's body is showing that Indiana needs to reconsider how much responsibility it is putting on her. Keep that question in mind, because later White gives an answer about Mitchell's role that may help explain why the Fever keep relying on her so heavily.
In the fourth quarter, had she played in the fourth quarter, I believe she would have played over 40-some minutes. Let's see here. Let me pull it up. So Kelsey Mitchell played 24 minutes. Caitlin Clark played 33 minutes. She probably would have been around the 38-minute mark. That'd be my guess. 38. Very close to 40, though. Very close. So she had 29 points in this game. I think she went crazy in the first half. I can't remember off the top of my head.
There is one important detail we should separate from the emotion. Mitchell played only 24 minutes because she left the game early, while Caitlin Clark played 33 minutes. Mitchell still scored 29 points in those 24 minutes. The source suggests she might have played around 38 or even 40 minutes if she had stayed in the game, but that is only a prediction. We should not treat minutes she never played as proof of anything. What we do know is that scoring 29 points in just 24 minutes shows how important Mitchell was to Indiana's offense. She was not simply standing in the corner waiting for the ball. Indiana was getting a lot of its offense from her. When a player is scoring that well, it is natural for a coach to keep giving her the ball. That is what makes the situation more complicated than simply blaming Mitchell for playing too hard or blaming the coach for using her too much. Competitive players usually want to stay involved and help their team win. Coaches are focused on winning each possession, while medical staff are watching the player's condition and making their own evaluations. Each of those decisions can make sense on its own, but together they can still create a problem if no one notices the workload until the player's body forces everyone to stop.
Guess what happened to Kelsey Mitchell today? Kelsey Mitchell was rushed to the locker room. She did not return because of what? Because of her overexerting her body. And guess who just told the truth about that? None other than Stephanie White. So if Kelsey Mitchell somehow jacks
This is
up
the moment
herself,
that changes the whole situation. Mitchell goes to the locker room and does not come back. At that point, this is no longer just a discussion about MVP races, shot attempts, or who should be the main offensive player. The biggest issue is whether she is available to play. The source quickly connects her exit to overexertion, but the information we have does not prove that. White publicly said Mitchell was overheating, and without more medical information, that should be treated as the official explanation. Still, fans can ask a bigger basketball question. If one of your most important players leaves during an important part of the game, should you keep using her in exactly the same way in the next game? Or should you create more options so the offense does not depend on her doing so much? That matters because Indiana's success will not be decided by who wins one August game. It will depend on which players are healthy and available when the most important playoff games arrive.
It was hot. Boy, Stephanie White knows she be lying. So let's pull up the temperature. Let's pull up the temperature in Toronto. Toronto weather. Let's pull up the temperature right now in Toronto. It is 72 degrees in Toronto right now. It's hot. It's hot. That's what she stayed on, man. Just say you played her too many minutes. You didn't give her enough breaks.
This is where the source's argument becomes much stronger. The commentator rejects White's explanation that Mitchell was affected by the heat. He checks the outdoor temperature in Toronto and then suggests that White wanted Mitchell to keep scoring so she could hurt Caitlin Clark's MVP chances. But those are serious claims, and the information presented does not prove them. First, the outdoor temperature does not tell us what the conditions were like inside the arena. White said Mitchell had played 2 games in a row in very hot conditions, but we do not have verified arena temperatures, medical information, hydration data, or other evidence that proves she was wrong. So calling her explanation a lie goes beyond the available evidence. Second, the idea that White is trying to hurt Caitlin Clark's MVP chances is speculation. There is no evidence here that Stephanie White is deliberately working against Clark or that Mitchell's role is part of some plan against her teammate. Once we remove that unsupported conspiracy theory, a more reasonable explanation remains. White does not need a secret reason to rely heavily on Mitchell. She may simply trust her as a scorer. And when White explains why she trusts Mitchell, the basketball reasoning becomes much easier to understand.
Yeah, she typed Asia Wilson played for the most consecutive 20-point games. Just kind of what's it like to have a player like that you rely on like day in, day out, and obviously the company she's in?
I mean, it's incredible. You know, she just can get a shot at any time. She gets a shot, you know, for herself. Her gravity creates shots for everybody else. It's nice to know that you can give her the ball and let her go to work. There aren't a lot of players that can just create those kind of shots that she does. And, you know, I think for us, it's almost like a crutch, you know, at times. It's
Listen
like
closely to what White is saying. She says Mitchell can create a shot for herself almost whenever she wants. She also says Mitchell's presence on the court creates opportunities for her teammates. Then she uses the most important word, crutch. That is the real issue here, not sabotage or some made-up conflict. It is about basketball dependence. When a coach knows that one player can save a difficult possession, the whole team can slowly start relying on her. If a play breaks down, give the ball to Kelsey. If a fast break slows down, let Kelsey attack. If the defense stops the first option, Kelsey can still create something on her own. That ability is extremely valuable, but it can also hide problems with the team's overall offense because the emergency option works so often. White's praise also contains a warning. Mitchell is so reliable at creating her own shots that Indiana could become too comfortable relying on her instead of working together to create easier shots. That is great when Mitchell is playing well, but it becomes a problem if she is tired, unavailable, heavily defended, or simply having a bad shooting night. Now her trip to the locker room looks different. The answer is not to tell Mitchell to stop being aggressive, because that would take away one of the Fever's biggest strengths. The real question is whether Indiana can keep that weapon while finding ways to depend on it less often.
I think for us, it's almost like a crutch, you know, at times. It's like give it to her and let her go to work. But I think it's just the result of Kelsey's hard work, man. Like, she grinds. She loves this game. She just wants to play. She doesn't get caught up in any of the nonsense. And she just brings something new every year. And
Mike then explains why Mitchell has earned so much trust. She works extremely hard, loves basketball, wants to play, and keeps improving her game every year. Whatever criticism you may have about Indiana's rotation or offensive balance, this does not sound like a coach who is carelessly using a player she does not value. It sounds like a coach who has a lot of confidence in Mitchell. That difference matters because the source tries to present White's praise as proof of favoritism. But there is another explanation that fits the same comments much better. Mitchell has earned a bigger role because she has repeatedly shown that she can handle difficult situations and make tough plays. There is also a mental side to this. The players who are hardest to protect from overworking themselves are often the players coaches trust the most. If Mitchell says she feels fine, wants the ball, and keeps scoring, both the player and coach naturally want to continue. That is why managing a player's workload is not as simple as telling a coach to take her out of the game. Indiana needs an offense that does not require maximum physical effort on every important possession. That means attacking earlier, creating more shots through passing, using Caitlin Clark's ability to attract defenders, involving Aaliyah Boston as a playmaking option, and making defenses deal with several threats before Mitchell has to create a difficult shot late in the possession. The goal is not to make Mitchell less important. The goal is to make her work hardest only when the team truly needs it.
Just to follow up on Kelsey being overheated, was there any concern of rhabdo like she had last year?
Not that I'm aware of.
Then a reporter asks the obvious question, after what happened last year, is there a concern that the same problem could happen again? White says not that she knows of, while also admitting that she is not completely sure. That is a limited answer, but a limited answer does not automatically mean something suspicious is happening. Coaches often speak right after games without having all the medical information. What matters now is whether Mitchell recovers normally and whether the Fever make any changes because of what happened. Fans should also avoid making two opposite mistakes. One side should not claim there is a serious medical problem without evidence. But the other side should not ignore the incident just because the first explanation sounds reassuring. Mitchell left the game and did not return, so it is reasonable to pay attention. The best approach is to remain uncertain while watching what happens next. If Mitchell is completely fine, that is great, and Indiana can move forward. But if this becomes a repeated problem, White's word, crutch, becomes much more important. It would mean the Fever were already warned that relying too heavily on Mitchell to create difficult shots could eventually come with a cost.
White just called out Sophie Cunningham to her face. She just stated, Sophie Cunningham get caught up in the nonsense. Golly. No, she did not. Just call out Sophie Cunningham in front of the media. Yes, she definitely did. Look at how Sophie looking at Stephanie White. Look at how she looking at her. Listen to it. Oh my God.
She grinds. She loves this game. She just wants to play. She doesn't get caught up in any of the nonsense. And she just brings something new every year. And
this section creates another controversy because the source hears White say that Mitchell does not get involved in nonsense and takes that as a direct criticism of Sophie Cunningham, especially because Sophie is sitting nearby. That is one possible interpretation, but White never actually said that. She did not mention Sophie by name or say that Cunningham was the person involved in nonsense. So saying that White was definitely calling out Sophie would turn an assumption into a fact. Still, it is easy to understand why people noticed the moment. Context can change how people hear certain comments. Cunningham has been one of the Fever players connected to more public moments and controversy, while Mitchell is mainly known for focusing on scoring and basketball. When Sophie is sitting nearby and the coach praises another player for staying away from nonsense, people will naturally look for meaning in facial expressions, body language, and tone. But body language is very easy to misunderstand because people often see what they already expect to see. A simple glance can be interpreted as anger, a neutral expression can look like tension, and a general compliment can suddenly seem like a hidden attack. The safest conclusion is that White clearly appreciates Mitchell's ability to stay focused on basketball. Whether she was also talking about someone else is unknown. And this brings us back to the first issue. The same quality White admires most in Mitchell, her complete focus and relentless approach to basketball, may also make her workload harder to manage. Mitchell wants to play, wants to work, and wants to keep attacking. That mentality is part of what makes her such a valuable player. The coaching and medical staff just need to make sure that strength does not eventually become a weakness.